Hello there and welcome to yet another episode of Know Your Laws, where we talk on matters to do with law, justice and legal affairs to help you unlearn and learn new laws that govern you. This week's episode, we are going to talk about matters to do with children, the Kenyan law on protection of children. The Kenyan law is very paramount when it comes to matters to do with children, and that is our basis of discussion in this week's episode. And to have that discussion is my guest, who is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, Kevin Doho. Welcome to the program, Kevin.
Thank you so much, Chris.
We understand very well. Just to begin the conversation in regards to the children's law, the Kenyan law is very paramount when it comes to protection of children. And my first question to you will be, what does the Kenyan law stipulate in regards to the children's rights?
Kenyan law is quite serious when it comes to children. It reflects the values of the Kenyan society towards the care and protection of children. The various laws that govern children include the Constitution of Kenya, the Children's Act 2001, and various provisions under the Bristol Institutions Act, and also various provisions under various laws such as the Penal Code, the Criminal Procedure Code, and various other laws in relation to how children are treated when they are facing the society, their parents, the church, when they're in conflict with the law, things like that. So it provides various rights, various liabilities and obligations to do with children.
As we remain on that particular matter of the Kenyan law in regards to children's rights, what are the children's rights as enshrined in the Kenyan Constitution?
They have the right to equal support from both parents, the right to education, the right to health, the right to live free of forced labor, and most of that is borrowed from the conventions and the international laws that Kenya has been part of for many long years. In fact, for right now in Kenyan time is that the Senate is considering to amend or to repeal and enact a new Children's Act so that it can align the laws to do with children with the new constitution, because the law of children as found under the Children's Act was enacted in 2001. It was a very comprehensive code, and there was a feeling that there was no need to enact a new one. But as the issues have cropped up with the conflict between the former acts of parliament and the current constitution of Kenya, many acts are now going through repeal and reenactment. And obviously there are conversations that are happening to be able to bring together the hodgepodge of the cultures and the values and morals of Kenyans into one code that everybody can stand by, obviously in line with the Constitution of Kenya 2010.
Talking about very comprehensive acts and policies that govern the children protection, let's now get into the real conversation, whereby in what we've talked about as the children's rights, rights to equal parental support and parental care, and the different rights as enshrined in the Kenyan Constitution. What happens now in that regard if the children's rights are neglected?
When children's rights are neglected, there are various avenues of concern to the Kenyan law. First, obviously, is the reports to the children protection officers. Most of them are usually found at police stations or various offices throughout the country. Those ones are charged with the protection of children within their jurisdiction. So if there is, for example, a mine somewhere where children are working day and night under very horrific circumstances where they can earn maybe a living, then the children protection officers will be there. Now, there are other issues when arise that we concern children. For example, there is usually, for example, mistreatment, rape, or murder of children, or a baby dies under mysterious circumstances. Then the police will get involved directly, and then the children officers will write their report. Or if there is a clear crime committed against a child, then there will be various steps to be followed under the Kenyan law, under the Penal Code, under the Children's Act. Now, when there is various conflicts between the guardians or the parents, then one parent has the right to approach court to ensure that the child is protected from that parent or is supported by that parent. So you might have protection orders against a parent, or you might have support and maintenance orders against a parent who was neglected or who is mistreating or molesting a child. So there are various avenues to approach these issues. There is a civil way, there is a criminal way, and all of them encircle the interest and so as to protect the interest of that child and its welfare.
Under the Kenyan law, at what point now do we say that this person has neglected a child's right, or at what point do we say that this child has been denied his or her rights? At what point do we look at that picture whereby this child now is not enjoying the rights and freedoms as enshrined in the Kenyan Constitution?
Okay, if we start with the civil side, you find the school fees to be paid, and one parent has been paying over and over again. The point where the child cannot be able to go to school because there was one parent who was not able to provide their half of the school fees, then there will be a right arising for the child to seek redress through the other parent as a guardian ad litem in court to enforce the payment of that school fees. If a child is sick and in hospital, that is an immediate concern. I remember when we go to court, when we used to have open court before COVID, when you just get into court, the first thing the judges will look at will say, first, let me deal with the children's matters. And the first is usually the children who are in hospital where there is a bill to be paid or an admission to be taken and one parent is just playing games. And that right accrues right there and then, and the court will issue arrest warrants and will make sure that parent is in court to explain why that bill in hospital has not been paid or that admission fee has not been paid. Other issues to do with health, to do with entertainment, housing, clothing, those are issues now that are tackled based on the circumstances of each and every case. Now beyond that, the point where a child is in another part of this world, maybe in formerly Burundi and the other, any time a child is given a gun and trained to kill, that crystallizes an infringement of that child's rights, because children are not supposed to be involved in conflict as children or soldiers or child soldiers. The moment also where you employ a child to maybe be a house girl, be a shamba boy, and you're paying that child, and that child doesn't have the freedom of choosing to do that work, then basically you're infringing on that child's rights, because there's a protection of children against forced labor. That moment you misuse that child in that manner, that right of the child crystallizes against you, who is doing that, and you'll have a huge problem with the law. So there are various facets and times in a child's life where certain rights crystallize, and they can lead to court proceedings, or they can lead to child protection proceedings. And the law has provided for that. We just hope that the resources that have been outlaid for those institutions are enough to take care of that. Yeah.
And now talking about that particular matter about children rights, under the Kenyan law is enshrined in the Constitution.
Yes.
The word child or children, because we understand there are different age groups, of course, of children. In reference to what is usually referred to the Kenyan law when dealing with matters to the children, what age do they have a specific age that they look at this particular person is a child until this point? When they get to this age, then they cease to be addressed as children.
What I know is a child has, the word child has various cultural connotations. A child, for example, even when you're an old man and your father is there, he'll still say, that's my child. But the law, the way it has been written with a certain age, that is 18. Formally, for Africans and Asians, it used to be 18. For whites, or what we call the European, people of European ethnicity, it used to be 21, until Parliament passed the Age of Majority Act way in the 1980s, which now codified the age as 18 for all races in Kenya. we had various racist laws in this country that flowed from colonialism. Then we got the Children's Act 2001, which now said a child's age ends at 18. Now, in between 2001 and now, there are various judgments that have been issued by the court saying a child under the Act, those rights endure even after they are 18. There was this famous article called Educating Diana, where the court was faced with a circumstance where a father had enrolled the daughter into medical school, and she had reached an age of 21, 22. Then the father reneged on paying the remainder of the school fees for her to finish the 6th year, 5th and 6th year of medical school. So the court found that the lady is still a child and still has a right to claim or demand or to enjoy school fees from the father for the remainder of the medical education. So the father was forced to pay for that remainder of the education. Now, children have a very, very similar position with insane persons or persons suffering from mental or total physical inabilities. What you call wards, wards of the state, where the court is a pater familias, the court is the one which protects children, persons with insane mind, and also bankrupt people. There are certain disabilities those people cannot have. So there is now a move in the Senate to make exact provision on how that age can be pushed up so that it caters for the rights of a child who's suddenly 18 and has been abandoned by those who have been his or her guardians for nearly all his life. So you might find the Senate might have to debate that judgment by that famous judge on when you're in college, when you're in university, are you still a child? You're a child as far as school fees, or are you also owing obligations of obedience and respect and attendance to your parents' instructions even after you're 18? Various cultures have come up with various laws. For example, in America, I think you can't buy alcohol until you're aged 21 and over in various states. In various places in the world, you might find yourself having very huge difficulty in convincing people to take you seriously until your age is 25. I think the Kenyan law provides that a president can be elected if you're not, you first have to be, I think, 35 or something, so that you can be able to be a president. So there are various disabilities to do with age, and they come from the cultural and moral setup of that society. Are we comfortable in seeing 18-year-old girls in a bar? Are we comfortable seeing young men entering into certain places? So that care does not end, that love does not end immediately at 18. Society still cares for somebody until at least 25, 27, 30. Then they're able to take you seriously. And it's as old as the Bible. For example, in Rome, the ancient Rome, you couldn't be elected into public office until you are 30. At least at that time, you could become a quaestor or what you find equivalent, maybe an MCA or a magistrate in court or something like that. That was the Roman way of dealing with that. With the English, they used to have that age of majority at 21, which was passed because of various social developments after the industrial age. But before, you cease to be a child at 13, 14. The Jews have their own age limits, and when you can be considered a man and you can partake as a man in one of their religious worships. We have a huge problem right now about the definition of a child. There is a famous judgment by, I think, Justice Chitambwe, where he basically made new laws on statutory rape, where if you have sexual intercourse with somebody under 18, that is statutory rape. There is no proving there is consent, nothing. That is statutory rape. But we find that age of definition of a child is something that is
back and forth.
and but Parliament has set it straight. It's 18. Yeah, at 18, anything lower than that, that's a child, and it obviously protects most of the girls against exploitation on girl circumcision and things like that. So you might find that age is not something that you can point at. If you read the positive law, you can say it's 18, but when you look at the circumstances of life, things just have a way of morphing into the needs of the society. They say the law is there to serve man. Man is not there to serve the law. So the judges have had a difficult time in some of the things that are arising in law.
And in that regard, of course, the responsibility of ensuring the children's laws falls to the parents, who sometimes we say are the custodians entitled to maintenance of the child as well. What happens in a scenario where one of the parents deprives the child from maybe seeing the other parent? Is this parent now interfering with the child's right?
Yes, that will be interfering the child's rights in certain circumstances. For example, why is the parent refusing the other parent to see the child? Was there molestation? Was there abuse? Was there underlying issues and facts that were there? Is it a protective way, or is there issues that are not in the best interest of the child? Now, the general rule is everything supposed to be done in the best welfare of the child. It's always in the best welfare of the child to be raised in a loving home of two parents. Now, if the parents are in conflict and they are punishing each other by one is taking custody and then denying the other one even the opportunity to see the child as a way of punishing that person, then the law has a problem there. And now the way it moves is you have to go to court. You have to have a court order that says custody is shared, or somebody will be having full custody, or who will be having primary custody and who will be having secondary custody. So if you as a parent you have been denied your right to your child, then you have the right, or you have the right and the obligation, not only the right but also the obligation to protect your child by seeking court intervention. We do not, the law does not presuppose self-help, where maybe, for example, the one parent, I have a matter I'm handling where one parent takes the children, moves them to Kenya, and they were born and raised in Britain, and their mother is left with just nothing. So she has to come all the way to Kenya to be able to get custody. So once that is, the court realizes one parent just strong-armed the other, then it will make appropriate orders on how those children will be treated, and where they'll be going for vacation. Will they be in Kenya? Will they be in Britain? And for various international couples, they have had issues with that type of treatment, where you find a movie star loses custody and they have children move from France to America. It's international. It's showing that it's not this fight of having access, opportunity to see your children. It's something that is inborn, it's human, and it's worldly, it's worldwide. So the courts have been guided by Parliament on how to approach that. You balance the interest, and that's now where you call the parents and they give you, as the judge, as the magistrate or judge, they give you the evidence on where the resources they have, the friends the children have made, the schools they are attending, the environment they are living. You might have to talk to the siblings and the other family members just to understand the environment of the child. Then the child, without the parents in court, is asked, sat down, very friendly, magistrate asks him, where do you want to stay? Do you prefer mommy or daddy? Things like that. The child also has something to say to that decision of where and who he wants to live with. So it's a delicate balancing act, and that's why in this republic we have special courts for that. The magistrates' courts have the children's courts, which are separate, and in the High Court we have a family division which is separate. That is in Nairobi. For the other high courts and magistrates courts outside Nairobi, there are various ways the judges and magistrates are sensitized to deal with matters children. Yes.
As you were talking, I was thinking of this scenario where a mother has been jailed, let's say, in a prison while pregnant and gives birth while still in prison. The rights of that child while still the mother is in prison, and considering that at a young age you cannot deny the mother custody of the child.
No, things to do with criminal justice and family have been a very strange topic in the history of the world. Not only do you have issues to do with children, you also have issues to do with conjugal rights, where there are people married and things like that. Now, formally, let me explain. From the Industrial Revolution, that's the time now we had prisons. And these prisons were basically just compounds and with some rooms on the side where everybody was put together. The mother, the father, the children, everybody's in, and it was called a gaol. Now, we moved from that to various prisons for segregating for men and women, obviously from the puritanical Christianity that was spreading throughout Europe, where you couldn't do mixed prisons anymore. Now, here in Kenya, we have male and female prisons. Now, for female prisons, there are various, the Prisons Act, and there are various rules under that. Now, formerly, we had a death penalty. That's now the beginning of the story. Mm-hmm. If the woman is pregnant on the date when it is said that she should die, then that death penalty gets automatically translated into a life sentence.
Life sentence. So
we had that issue. So what used to happen is that, weirdly or strangely enough, by the date this woman was to be sentenced to death, she's suddenly pregnant. Mm-hmm. Now, what happens to a woman who's pregnant in prison and has lived a large part of her life in prison and is not going out of prison? So various rules were made. They can live up to the time they are walking. They can walk, they can talk, they can attend school. Then they can now leave prison and go live with a relative, or if there is no relative, maybe be taken up under foster care or under various children's homes, where they'll have a better chance of life rather than being raised in prisons. And that had a huge effect on the mentality of that child. If, for example, somebody who's born in prison and has lived a certain part of his life in prison, will have various thoughts and various attitudes towards the law and the way to live in society. So to avoid that, you don't have, the period is limited to as short time as possible, but not to deny the child a mother's warmth and a mother's comfort and things to do with life and the relationship. But for right now, it's usually very difficult for you to think about it, because it's not law right now. The policies have to be enacted into law. What does the law say about a mother and a child in prison? Now, the parliament has to come up and say, first, at the police station, there must be a place for children and a place for the mother. That has already been enacted, but when you look at it, the resources for building those types of police stations are not there. You find police stations, when you're arrested, they are very, very dirty, very cruel places to be. And because of that history of our police stations being so dirty, so cruel, Kenyan judges from even early from independence have said you cannot keep a person who's arrested in a police jail for more than 24 hours. You have to produce him either in 24 hours, or if it's a Friday, you produce him on Monday. That is as far as the judges and the law have protected individuals. But when you look at it, what happens if you have a child? Where do they sleep? What do they eat? Now, converse, now you go to jail. Oh, jail. What are the facilities that have been provided? Our jails are human rights. It's a human rights abuse to be imprisoned in a Kenyan jail. There are no rights. People sleep on the floor. At least these days there is mattresses and there's blankets, but unless you're you're one of those considered well-behaved prisoners, that's the time you'll get a bed, and most of the time it's only 10 or 15 who will get a bed. Okay. Or if you are a high net worth individual, if you go to prison, you have your own special place. For example, we used to have detention without trial for political detainees. So there were special places where political detainees would be placed. That was now the political class protecting itself if they're ever taken to prison because of one thing or another. Because obviously our founding fathers and the first generation of our independence politicians were all prisoners, most of them like Jomo Kenyatta. So they made sure at least in prison there is a special place for political prisoners. But who gets to sleep there? What are their provisions? Now when you look at women prisons, you find there are various informal ways that the prison wardens and the prison system have tried to improve the condition. But they need more resources, they need a statutory basis of what they are doing. They are doing it out of kindness, because when the prison doors close, you as the prisoner are in prison together with the guard. So the guard is coming to prison as work, you are there as punishment. So that type of relationship between prisoners and prison wardens softens the heart and has enabled there to be a bit of humaneness, especially in women prisons and where children are concerned.
Okay, and as we conclude now briefly, a child has committed a criminal offense. What does the Kenyan judicial system do to favor the rights of the child? Just in brief as we conclude, because time has far much gone.
So for children, when they commit they commit a crime, they're considered under various capacities. Dole in Campax, where even if the child committed the crime, there is no liability. For example, a boy aged, I think, below 12 or is it 11 cannot commit rape. Then there is those ones who are considered protected. Those ones between now the ages of 12 and 18. If they commit a crime, there is a special legal system for them. They go to different courts. So, for example, if they did theft or things like that, they go to the children's court, which has jurisdiction to handle their criminal nature. Now, there are certain aspects of crime that are so shocking to society that they do not want to say that's a child. So, for example, if it's a robbery with violence and the child maybe is 17, I was in the company of adults, the law sometimes will have to presume that this child will be tried as an adult. Now that's also a balancing act, because now the crime was committed amongst various people. If the child is sent to another court to be tried for the same crime, then that court finds the child innocent. Then these people, the adults, are tried in a different court on the same facts, on the same crime, and they're found guilty. Now there'll be conflict. Because these ones will say, we did the crime with the child and the child has been set free as we have been convicted. Or these ones are the adults are set free and the child is convicted. So you might find the courts having to balance, do we really punish the child as an adult in this group crime, or do we send him to another court? Okay. That's now something that the courts have grappled with for a long time.
In regards to determining criminal cases for children.
Yeah.
And that is where we wind up this particular discussion on matters to do with the children's rights, hoping our viewer has been educated and been able to learn on the different application of the children's laws right here in our country, where the law is very paramount in regards to protecting the child. And that has been our discussion on this week's episode, where we have been talking about the children's law. My guest has been Kevin Doho, who is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. Remember, you can leave any question that you need to be answered on our social media platforms. And this is Know Your Laws. My name is Chris Sambo, and see you on the next episode. Goodbye.